The Russian air defense system at the Kacha airfield in occupied Crimea proved unprepared to counter Ukrainian attack drones. According to expert Pavlo Lakiychuk, head of security programs at the Strategy XXI Center for Global Studies, the Russians will either have to abandon the airfield or risk further losses of aircraft, as reported by the Kyiv 24 broadcast. The strikes on Kacha are accompanied by spectacular raids by our naval and other drones on Sochi, Tuapse, and Novorossiysk. Not only is Novorossiysk now the main naval base for the Russians who fled Crimea, but it's also Russia's main oil loading ports, where oil is transshipped onto those same tankers of the Shadow Fleet, Lakiychuk noted. Under these circumstances, the withdrawal of Russia's military bases from Crimea is considered inevitable. The expert added that the enemy could give up on Kacha and redeploy its equipment or leave it in place. As they say, if it's already burning, then let us all burn together, he emphasized. According to Lakiychuk, the occupiers' air defenses proved to be leaky. Or rather, they weren't leaky, they were unprepared for the methods our intelligence and special services used to strike deep behind enemy lines, the expert added. Serhiy Bratchuk, a spokesman for the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, noted that the Ukrainian Defense Forces have intensified strikes against enemy targets in temporarily occupied Crimea. He stated that Ukrainian aircraft may soon appear over the peninsula and that the intensified attacks are part of a response to Russia's so-called summer offensive. Crimea has not disappeared from the agenda. Today, the intensification of attacks on Russian facilities in occupied Crimea continues. This intensification is actually part of the response to the so-called summer offensive on the Russians. Indeed, we are talking about the fact that today, the defense forces of Ukraine continue to work very actively in Crimea. These are ground, air, and sea operations. There is the destruction of Russian air defense facilities, the destruction of sea facilities, and the destruction of ground facilities, in particular railway facilities. After all, the Russian railway today remains a key logistical artery for the army of the invaders, said Bratchuk. The Ukrainian Defense Forces are actively working on Russian military facilities in Crimea. This activity is also aimed at exhausting the enemy's air defense. This stage has been going on for quite some time. With such actions, our units of the armed forces of Ukraine are paving the way for our other firepower. I will not speak for the Flamingo and Neptune missiles now, but the path is being paved. Therefore, I think that soon, of course not tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, but over time, Ukrainian aircraft may appear in the sky over Crimea, which will strike at ground targets, he stressed. The Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, is strengthening drone sanctions against Russia. The service has begun targeting targets across enemy territory, and Russians should get used to it. Military expert Alexei Kopytko writes about this. According to Kopytko, Trump's rhetoric has changed, in part under the influence of drone strikes in Russia. Let's return to the traditional Kid and Friends impose sanctions column. Something's constantly burning in Crimea. There are strikes on Moscow, Astrakhan, and Bashkortostan. In the latter, SBU drones attacked one of the largest full-cycle processing facilities for the second time, the expert writes. The expert notes that the entire Russian territory from the Baltic to the Urals is currently under fire. For the second time in a short period of time, the SBU has used drones to reach a distance of 1,400 kilometers. This is an astonishing achievement. What's significant is not only the fact of the attack itself, but also the fact that it's a repeat strike, but Russia is unable to repel it. Kopytko believes. Russia's opportunities for generating excess profits are now limited. Russia is already forced to raise VAT to 22% and is objectively bogged down in war, the expert concludes. As a reminder, it was previously reported that SBU drones struck Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat in Bashkortostan, Russia, for the second time in a week. This is one of Russia's largest oil refineries and petrochemical plants. It produces 150 different products, including motor gasoline, diesel fuel, fuel oil, bitumen, and polyethylene. The target site is approximately 1,400 kilometers from Ukrainian territory. Recently, Russia's two largest oil ports on the Black Sea have stopped loading oil onto tankers following overnight Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian territory, Bloomberg reports. The incident concerns two strategically important facilities near Novorossiysk, the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal and the Sheskharis oil depot. Caspian Pipeline Consortium reported that the suspension of operations was due to airstrikes. Regarding the oil depot, no official explanation has yet been provided. It is only known that operations at the facility have been temporarily suspended. Both terminals handle over 2 million barrels of oil per day from Russia and Kazakhstan, playing a key role in the global energy supply system. Since early August, Ukraine has dramatically intensified its attacks on Russian oil assets, prompting the Kremlin to ban gasoline exports and consider restrictions on diesel fuel. These attacks have focused on oil refineries, but ports and pumping stations have also been targeted. The report states, according to a Kiev military expert, the country simply vitally needs to continue attacks on the Russian oil refining industry, as this is the only way to win the war. Other methods are either difficult or impossible. Military expert, pilot instructor, and retired Ukrainian colonel Roman Svitan expressed this opinion on Radio NV. The Russian army can be defeated, for example, in Crimea or the land bridge, even now when Russia is strong. But we won't liberate Donbass without the collapse of Russia. Beyond Donbass, there are another 7,000 kilometers of Russian rear with its industry and population. And driving the Russian army out of Donbass is only possible with the collapse of Russia brought about by non-military mechanisms. That is, through pressure on the Russian economy. Svitan explained. He added that a significant portion of the Russian economy is based on oil and gas sales. Therefore, Ukraine was wrong to suspend its smashing strikes in March of this year, relying on agreements and seeking peace. Ultimately, Russia recovered, and now Kiev is forced to make up for lost time and suffer for itself. We must reduce the flow of these petrodollars as much as possible. Then, not only will Ukraine be liberated, but all the other republics will be free to move forward. And the Russian army too, since any army stems from the state. So if the state collapses, there will be no army. Only then will we be able to liberate our territory. Work on Russian oil refineries has been ongoing since August. If no one stops the attacks, they will set the printing press in motion by the end of the year. Moscow will have to work under these conditions for another year and then collapse and ruin by 2027. That's the dream of the Ukrainian Russophobe, he said. Recently, Ukrainian armed forces launched another attack on two strategic Russian oil refineries in Saratov and Samara Oblast. Together, they produced over 15 million tons of oil annually, or over 5% of Russia's total. Damage assessments are underway at the refineries. Russia's two largest oil ports on the Black Sea have halted oil loading onto tankers following overnight drone strikes by Ukraine. Bloomberg reports. Preliminarily, the reports refer to two major terminals near Novorossiysk in Russia, the Caspian Pipeline Consortium terminal, and the Sheskharis oil depot, while the SRS stated that the halt was solely due to air raid alerts. Exact details regarding the Sheskharis depot are not yet available beyond the fact that operations have stopped. Together, these two terminals export over 2 million barrels of oil per day from Russia and Kazakhstan. Caspian Pipeline Consortium and Sheskharis are key parts of the global oil supply chain, which transports more than 400 million barrels per day. Ukraine has radically increased its targeting of Russian oil assets since the start of August, a step that has prompted the Kremlin to ban gasoline exports and consider curbs on diesel. Those attacks have centered on refineries, but ports and pumping stations have also become targets. The outlet adds,